talking about Star Trek that I don't have much interest in, and wearing your favorite shirt.
It's a good way to start the show. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Two Non-Critics. This is the first episode that we will have both video and audio for. I hope to post this as an audio podcast, because it was the original intent of the show, and I'm tired of trying to look pretty on camera. So, um, I we're two lifelong friends and film buffs with very different tastes talking about movies. I'm non-critic Dustin, and with me from Hawaii. He's not from Hawaii, but that's where he is right now. Is
Non-critic Will, and I am wearing non-critic Dustin's favorite shirt because he hates Man of Steel. So I just wanted
with a
to wear
passion.
that,
With
wear
a
that
big
for the
passion.
fans.
Did you see Supergirl's outfit for the new Supergirl show?
Nope.
Yep,
And
there's
there's gonna be a show.
yeah, there's gonna be a Supergirl TV show on CBS, I think. And her costume, it looks like Supergirl's costume. It's got the boots and the skirt and the shirt and the cape, but it's the same design as the Man of Steel costume. So it's like basically any joy is gone. It's not a bright blue. It's a blue that's pretty much black, and it's the same sort of S and
It's like a navy blue.
yeah, at night. It's like a navy blue at night. It's a midnight blue. It sucks. I mean, the costume, it looks like I said, it looks like Supergirl's costume, so that's fine. But why do they have to suck all the joy out of these characters, man? Anyway, let's not get into that. Speaking of which, did you see Momoa as Aquaman yet? Jason Momoa?
Um, I saw pictures of him.
Mm-hmm.
On they have it on like IGN and stuff, and they show pictures of what he would look like, what his costume looks like, and he's an older version of Aquaman, pretty much, but except he still has his hand.
Yeah, that's all right. I like Aquaman, and whatever they can do to make Aquaman be taken seriously will be fine. At least Aquaman, in most renditions, is kind of a not meaner, just more stern character because he's a king and he's got a lot of shit to deal with. So I'm okay with them not making him all smiley and happy and whatnot. But so I guess I saw that and I wasn't like, okay, I'm sold on this movie. I was like, all right, I'll take that. That's fine.
You should see Throne of Atlantis, like I was telling you.
I
don't
did.
know if
I
you saw
watched it last night.
I watched it yesterday. Pretty good. I liked it.
Mhm.
Pretty good.
I posted a short review of it on Facebook. Anyway, now for what we're really here to talk about, which is Star Trek, the films. I wanted to do a series on the Star Trek movies since we first came up with the idea of doing this show. I'm a lifelong Star Trek fan. I'm more of a fan now than I was as a kid. When I was a kid, I watched Star Trek The Next Generation and the original series with my mom. I have very fond memories of watching them. To me, Star Trek and Star Wars is in my blood. It's always part of me. Star Trek is like a bonus. I used to see it as like a bonus thing because there used to be only 3 movies of Star Wars. And then if I wanted to see spaceships and I wanted to see aliens, there was Star Trek. And the first 6, especially 2 through 6 of the Star Trek movies, they have that same sort of look and feel as a lot of the movies in the 80s, a lot of the fantasy sci-fi movies of the 80s, so I sort of have a fondness for them the same way I have a fondness for Neverending Story, Legend, movies like that. And lately I've been becoming more of a Star Trek fan because I can appreciate it more. Before it used to be I liked it because it was in the future, there were spaceships and there were aliens, and I liked some of the characters. Now I'm starting to appreciate the wide array of stories you can tell on Star Trek. The stories you can tell in Star Wars are Star Wars stories. They're always going to be about... I mean, there's subtext to Star Wars stories. There's subtext about family, about fate, about destiny, which is the same thing. But the stories are good versus evil. Duh. Star Trek isn't like that. Star Trek is they have good guys versus the bad guys, but often the bad guys aren't necessarily bad. They just have an opposing point of view, and they're going about things the wrong way. And the shows and the movies try and emphasize that, which I really appreciate. So they have big sweeping adventure stories like Wrath of Kahn, which we'll be talking about today. But then they also have very simple stories about that where nothing much happens, but people reconnect or they encounter an alien race and they just try to understand that alien race. And there's just so many stories over such a wide scope that they can tell that I've grown to appreciate over the years. And also, the older I get, I've come to appreciate the idea of a hopeful future. So often, you know, the future in movies and TV is like bleak. You have like I think of like Mad Max or The Hunger Games, Blade Runner, stuff like that. The future is a shitty, shitty place. Star Trek says, look, the future's maybe it won't suck. Maybe we'll figure our shit out and we'll live in a world where hunger isn't a problem, disease isn't a problem, money's not a problem, and we just want to better ourselves as a species and explore the stars. And I find that very, very appealing. Now, non-critic Will, there's a very interesting past with Star Trek in that it does not exist. Why don't you like Star Trek?
Okay. Okay. Number one for me, as far as Star Trek and Star Wars, I've always chose Star Wars over Star Trek. I just naturally had more interest in it. My history of Star Trek when I was a kid was my dad used to watch it. My dad used to watch it. My mom watched it a little bit, but I don't know. For me, when I saw it come on, it just didn't have no interest for me because it just seemed like I guess when a TV show was out, I didn't really see any of the adventures that they had. All I saw was people in a ship talking constantly, and that annoyed the hell out of me. Like, I, granted, I didn't give the show a chance. I really didn't give the show a chance. It was one of those where the moment I hear the theme music, I just turn the channel because I'm like, oh fuck, it's just gonna be people on a ship talking for half an hour. What is interesting about this? What is so interesting about this? You're just talking on a damn ship for half an hour. Oh my god! So that was the reason why I didn't really have interest in Star Trek. Now, as far as the movies are concerned, I never watched Wrath of Khan until yesterday, since we're doing a show for it. But the one Star Trek movie that I did watch and like a lot, you can help me with this. I don't know the actual title, but it was the movie with the Borg, the Queen of the yeah, that's what it was with the Queen of the Borgs and Data.
Queen of the Borgs. Star Trek, Queen of the Borgs. Yeah.
And what did Data killed her at the end?
Yeah. Spoilers. Data kills her at the
He
end.
pulled it. It's an old movie, people. If y'all didn't see it, then fuck it, I'm sorry. But
You should have seen it. The movie's 20 years old.
When he pulled her into, I guess, the chemical, the gas that kills you, whatever chemical it was, and she melted or whatever. She melted or disintegrated, whatever. But yeah, I like that one. I did like that movie. And it wasn't until recently, I mean 2009, when the remake came out, and then the second one in 2013, that I grew interest again in Star Trek. Because if they never would have made a remake, I wouldn't have no interest in watching anything dealing with Star Trek. Mm-hmm. So that remake kind of brought something back, and it gave it a new feel. I know I'm just hurting fans right now. Hardcore Star Trek fans are just like, you are an asshole. I'm sorry, people, but because of what the remakes, and also now me watching Wrath of Khan, and also just me liking First Contact, I will get into Star Trek. I don't know about pushing it to the TV show, but I'll start with the movies. We'll see how that one works. I'll start with the movies.
I agree with something I heard someone say on a podcast. It was the best if you're even vaguely interested in Star Trek, the best thing to do is to talk to someone like myself who knows more about it than you, and have them kind of have them show you bits from like every Star Trek show, like the best stories, and whichever one you connect with the most, you should. So like, if you were to say, I'm really interested in Kirk and Spock and stuff like that, I could show you episodes from the original series that I think you'd like, and then if you connect with any of them, then it's up to you. You can go explore the original series.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I have a question too. Actually,
Mm-hmm.
here we go. Asking a Star Trek fan. I do remember one distinct TV episode.
Sorry, everyone. What?
I do remember one distinct TV episode where I guess it was a crossover because you had Spock and Kirk, and they met the other captains from the later TV show, Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Well, there's
Professor, the guy that plays Professor Xavier.
Professor X. Yeah, Captain Picard.
Yeah, I remember I saw that crossover where they met each other, and I was like, wait, what's going on here? Yeah.
Well, Spock was on a couple episodes of The Next Generation, and there was a movie, Star Trek Federations, which is a horrible movie that I hope we talk about eventually, where Kirk and Picard meet each other. And that's the movie that takes place before First Contact. And because that was supposed to be like the original series handing off the film franchise to the next generation. So there's that. A couple of other cast members from the original series showed up on Star Trek: The Next Generation. Dr. McCoy was in the first episode of Next Generation. He had a really funny cameo in that. So, because some of them just lived long enough to be in the Next Generation, but that's really the only. I mean, there are other ones I'm sure that I'm forgetting, but those are the major ones.
So pretty much like the Next Generation, they had the USS Enterprise, right? Like after Captain Kirk and his team, Captain Picard, they took over the USS Enterprise.
Well, there's like a 75-year gap in the storytelling. So it's like, there's Kirk and all them. They have the Enterprise, and then you're supposed to think that after they're done, there's a 75-year gap where there is another captain of the Enterprise between that time, but you only see him really in Star Trek Federation, played by Cameron from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And so then they have the next generation of Enterprise. Yeah, after like 75 years later.
Okay.
So to begin, Star Trek: The Motion Picture. I did not have non-critic Will watch this because if you want to get a non-Star Trek fan into Star Trek, you do not show them the boring one. That's really the subtitle for this movie. It's not Star Trek: The Motion Picture. It's Star Trek: The Boring One. The reason for that is there are long, long, long scenes of nothing. Not even talking, not fighting, just the Enterprise floating around with really pretty music. And when I was a kid, I avoided this one like the plague. I finally got to a point where I watched it with my mom. As I asked my mom, I was like, I've never watched this one. Is it even good? And she's like, I like it. Some of the special effects are really good. So she put it in. I fell asleep within about 10 minutes. Every time since then, I've fallen asleep. Until about a year ago, when I watched it and loved it. I really, really loved it. And the reason for that is, of all the Star Trek movies, I think this one is and this, don't use this as a way to deter you from watching any more Star Trek, but for me, this is the most Star Trek of the Star Trek movies. I think Wrath of Kahn is more in the how we fondly remember Star Trek, and the more, good guys versus the bad guys type stories. But when you think of the conceit of Star Trek, which is to explore and encounter new things, that's what this movie is. The Enterprise goes up an entirely new species, a gigantic living machine that's looking for its creator. And when you think about that, and you think that they are witnessing new life for the very first time, it's fascinating. I actually, pardon me, I actually cried at the end of it. I thought it was beautiful. It's not a perfect movie. There's a lot of stuff in it that um, plot holes, or not necessarily plot holes, but just like Kirk is kind of a dick in it, and because he's sort of dealing with being an admiral for the first time, not having control of the Enterprise, and he sort of manipulates his way back into the captain's role. He's sort of responsible for some of the shitty things that happen in there. But other than that, I really, really like the movie. I think people should go back and rewatch it with new eyes. Don't look for the wham bam pow, the shooting and all that, and jumping around J.J. Abrams Star Trek stuff, which I like, by the way. I like 2009. I even like Into Darkness, which people are going to hate me for saying that. Then Star Trek fans fucking hate Into Darkness. But which we'll get into that when we talk about Wrath of Kahn for obvious reasons.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I think people should give it another watch. If you haven't watched that movie in years and you just think of it as the boring one, remember what Star Trek is about and watch it again. I think you might appreciate it. So, and it's gorgeous. In HD, that thing is fucking gorgeous to look at. And the music, Jerry Goldsmith's score, that music you probably used to turn off from Next Generation with Picard and stuff, that started in Star Trek: The Motion Picture. I'm not going to do that. It started there, and they didn't play it again in the movies until Star Trek V with Jerry Goldsmith came back. But I really, really like that movie. So moving on to what is arguably the fan favorite Star Trek film, which is Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. And I say arguably because there seems to be two minds here. To Star Trek fans, Wrath of Khan is the best. It's the one that gets the characters absolutely right the way they remember them. It's got a very entertaining story. It's a little dark without going too dark. It's a great movie. And it builds on the Star Trek mythology quite a bit. And then there's another group of fans who are more casual fans, I think, who are more like how I used to be, and they like Star Trek 4 the best, which I understand that as well. And I think you're going to like Star Trek 4 quite a bit. Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan is pretty much a sequel to a Star Trek episode called The Space Seed, where you first meet the Botany Bay and Ricardo Montalban as Khan. And I've gone on long enough. Non-critic Will, what was your impression of Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan?
Well, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. I'll say I enjoyed the movie. At first, when I first put the movie on, it was kind of hard. It was kind of hard to to sit through it and watch. I'm like, I want to turn this off so bad. I just want to turn it off. I want to turn it off. But
I was actually thinking that when I watched it recently. I was like, he might have trouble getting through this beginning here because it's a bit of a fake out, and then there's a lot of talking afterwards.
Yeah.
At least the talking they do is really good.
But I guess what kept me watching the movie at first was number one, the very beginning when they were doing the simulation, the Kobayashi simulation, because I guess that because of seeing the remake and knowing what the simulation is, I'm like, oh, okay, well, I have something to tie in. And the Lieutenant Savick, I think her name was Lieutenant Savick.
Kirstie Alley.
Kirstie Alley, yeah, she was a mentionable face because I remember her from Look Who's Talking. And Look Who's Talking too, so I'm like, okay, well.
That's the only thing I remember Kirstie Alley from?
Yeah.
She's not Cheers for years. She's done lots of other things. You're like, oh, look who's talking.
Yeah. I mean, I had to get something that will tie me into watching the movie still. And she was famous for me for she was famous for me for watching for Look Who's Talking to Me. Ever since I was a kid, I watched Look Who's Talking one, two, Look Who's Talking now, whatever. But I know her from that. I know her from that. So I had something to base it off. I'm like, okay, I can kind of watch it because that's the Look Who's Talking lady. um, then of course William Shatner comes in, Kirk. Um, when they started talking about the things called Project Genesis, am I correct?
Mm-hmm.
I'm correct.
Yep.
When they talk about Project Genesis and how to recreate an environment or a planet that can have that's suitable for human habitat, human life. That idea seemed interesting, but you have to destroy everything around in order to create, which was weird. It was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, Khan comes into play. One thing I thought that was interesting and very, I mean, that'd be creepy for me is those little bugs
Jesus
or
Christ,
whatever,
yeah, yeah.
and how they slowly crawl into your ear and they mind control.
Terrified me when I was a kid, man. Terrified
Those
me.
those things look horrible. I would be scared of shit of those things. And then if they
Ugh.
just crawl in your ear and they control you, they're just in your brain biting you. Ugh, I can't do it. So I mean that was interesting. What I did think was funny is that the captain of that ship, what was it called? The Reliant,
Oh,
was it?
man. Yeah, the Reliant, yes.
The Reliant, the captain, the black dude. I knew him from Terminator One as the chief of the
Mm-hmm.
police department. And he got shot up by Arnold, but I knew him. And what I thought was funny was that his name was Terrell. It was like, wow, such a black name. Such a black name. Yeah, Captain Terrell. It's like, oh, he's not black. um, uh, but okay, going on throughout the movie, as he found out that it was Khan that actually gave the order to conduct Project Genesis. It wasn't Kirk, and when Kirk found him, when they Captain Terrell, when he killed himself to resist the mind control of that whatever bug. Those guns are crazy. Those
Phaser.
little phasers, they just disintegrate you like that.
Yep.
You're going. You're out of existence.
That's why they
Those are
usually
crazy.
set them to stun.
And but the other dude, he just, I guess he resisted the mind control, but he passed out, and the bug got out of his ear.
Yeah,
Uh,
something like that.
I
I
don't know
didn't
how
really
that works.
understand that.
Yeah, one person killed himself, the other one just passes out, the bug gets out of your ear. Oh, okay, that was
I'm sure they
nice.
explained it. Here's another thing I should mention, not to cut you off. When I say I'm a Star Trek fan, I am not a fan of technobabble. There's a lot of
Mhm.
technobabble in Star Trek. And whenever they explain the name of a race, like those little slug things, I don't care. I don't care what they're called. You just tell me that they crawl inside you and they mind control. That's all I need to know. And I think that's a lot of thing that that's something that turns a lot of people off too is the technobabble. You don't need to understand the technobabble to enjoy Star Trek. As long as you understand that the thing they're talking about does another thing, you're fine. You're set. And so I don't know the names of a lot of the ships. I don't know the names of half the shit that's in the ships. I don't care. Just tell me what it does, and I'm fine. Anyway, continue.
Um, as far as the whole revenge plot, I guess, as for Khan, his revenge because he feels that Kirk was responsible for the death of his wife and
Mm-hmm.
his family on a Zeta Alpha 6
Mm-hmm.
or 5. Well,
Five.
6 exploded. 6 exploded, but it affected 5, which killed his wife. I don't know, but as far as Khan, his character Khan, I mean, um, he had one set goal in motion was to cause agony and pain and torture to Kirk any way possible, even if it meant like I'm going to take everything from you and let you live just so you can experience the pain I felt because you took my wife away. Pretty much, you killed my wife.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he had a one set goal, even when Captain Kirk they got the drop on him when he was like, hold on, I just need to get the plans for Project Genesis, but they were actually um, decoding the shields so they can do a counterattack. Khan did not want to leave. They was like, sir, we have to abort. We have to abort. The ship is damaged. She's like, no, no, we're staying here. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
damn. Like Khan was on a vengeance. Khan he came with a vengeance. Um,
He was
but
very
throughout the whole
wrathful.
Khan, but that was my favorite part. And throughout the whole movie, Khan. Um, okay, okay, big thing. Let's that jump into the ending
Mm-hmm.
when Spock gave his life to save everybody, pretty much, to get the ship back in running condition so they can leave before Project Genesis, before the ship exploded and everything and destroyed all matter around. Um, Now, when you look at Into the Darkness, what you were talking about earlier, I can see now why they say a lot of Star Trek fans were very pissed off or very upset. Because I remember when Into the Darkness first came out, and when you saw it and I saw it, you told me that in the original, in Wrath of Kahn, it was Spock that gave his life,
Mm-hmm.
not Kirk. So I was just like, oh, me just not knowing, I'm like, all right, oh, okay. But now I see why there are a lot of pissed off fans from that, and then also with Into the Darkness, Kirk gives his life. Same thing, same because of the radiation and stuff, trying to fix the ship, and then that famous line that I just said, "God," that
Mm-hmm.
everybody knows, but now Spock does it in Into the Darkness. I can see why people were pissed off, and then
Yes.
you brought Kirk back to life somehow because of the regeneration of the cells
Mm-hmm.
or whatnot from Khan's race. But Spock originally died and was dead. Unless he comes back, I don't know if he comes back. But they shot his coffin to the new planet that was just created.
Yep. Well, the
So
next one is called The Search for Spock. So I don't know
okay,
if that tells you anything. But I want to talk about that ending a little bit because it's like everyone's favorite ending ever in a Star Trek movie, and it's a great ending. Sort of ruined by the fact that the next one is called The Search for Spock, but yeah, it's a fantastic ending, and it's very quiet. I like how quiet it is. Leonard Nimoy does an amazing job as as Spock. I love that when he stands before meeting his captain, he fixes his uniform because that's what you do, and he's still all about protocol. I love that he has the live long and prosper thing on the window and all that, and it is a great scene. Now, when I saw Into Darkness and that scene came up, I was thrilled actually because I thought it was. We've seen Spock die, and we saw Kirk deal with that. We've never seen Spock have to deal with the death of Kirk. Now, that's not necessarily something that has to happen in a movie. We don't really have to know how Spock would handle Kirk's death. Um, so, I mean, you can see it as unnecessary, which I agree it is. But if you're going to do it, I feel they did it well, and I liked that the idea that when Spock in Into Darkness, when he yells Khan, it's totally different than when Kirk does it in Wrath of Khan. Because when Kirk does it in Wrath of Khan, it's more, it's not out of rage, it's more out of defiance. It's not, he's not doing it because he's so upset. Because in the next scene, he's not upset at all. Um, uh, I liked the idea of somebody doing it out of rage, out of despair, and to have Spock be the one to do it said a lot. Like, Vulcans are supposed to, and the Spock in the new movies doesn't do this very well, but they're supposed to suppress emotion. They're not emotionless. They just suppress the emotion because it causes problems. Um, and to have Spock be the one who just completely lashes out, I thought was powerful. I agree it's unnecessary, and I agree it was kind of cheap to sort of allude to Wrath of Kahn, which is like everybody's favorite movie. But to me, I thought if you're going to do it, they did it well. And any respect I had as a Star Trek fan just went out the window. But but I think the thing that works so well about Wrath of Khan is that it's Moby Dick. Nicholas Meyer, the writer, co-writer and director, I think he's co-writer. Um, he he had, I believe, he had Ricardo Montalban read Moby Dick before filming the movie because he wanted that. Moby Dick is a very weird, very silly book, um, and and I know it's classic literature, and I totally understand why. But I think it's something a lot of people forget, and the same goes for Bram Stoker's Dracula. But I mean, that's another topic. It's funny, and it's intentionally funny, and Captain Ahab's just blind rage at a fucking whale is hilarious, and it's meant to be funny, but it's also meant to be powerful. And so that's what I believe they wanted with Khan, is they wanted just this blind hate that he would sacrifice his entire crew, he'd do whatever it takes just from Hell's Heart to stab Kirk right in the fucking face. Like and I think that all those moments when they're in the nebula and everything, that all worked, and it all works really well. It's all very suspenseful because you know what's at stake, and they handle that very, very well. Overall, it's not hard to see why this is pretty much every Star Trek fan's favorite Star Trek movie. It's got a lot of heart to it. It's a very sweet movie. It's a very sad movie. There's a lot of character depth. You know, Kirk spends a lot of time just reflecting on getting older. He's an admiral now instead of he was an admiral in the last one, but he's really not doing well with being an admiral. Um, and it's cool to see these big action heroes who are in their like 40s and 50s have to deal with the fact that they're in their 40s and 50s because you don't see that very often. And would you say, I know you enjoyed the movie, but would you say this has sort of piqued your interest into looking into more? Like, are you looking forward to watching the other movies as we go on?
I'm looking forward to watching The Return of Spock. I want to see
Search
that.
for Spock. It might as well be called The Return of Spock, but yeah. Search
Oh,
for Spock.
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
My
No,
bad.
yours is a better title because that's what it is. They search for Spock for about 10 minutes in there.
I'm looking forward to seeing The Search for Spock. I want to rewatch First Contact because that was one I did enjoy a lot. I also want to see the one. Okay, now this is another movie reference, but this is the only way I know about it. Remember on Cable Guy to Jim Carrey when they were fighting in the medieval times, and there was the one where he was like, Spock and Kirk, best friends fighting to the death. Mm-hmm. Like, whatever that one was, I don't know what
that was on the TV show.
That was a TV show, wasn't a movie?
No, it was a TV. Yeah, it was a TV show. It's when is it called? Oh, I'm not going to try and say the title of the show because I fuck up the titles of the episodes so bad. But it's the one where Spock is in the throes of Pon farr, which with Vulcans, because they suppress all emotions and urges and things like that. Every now and then they get. I think it's every 7 years. I think people are going to hate me, but I think it's every 7 years. It begins Pon farr. It's when their bodies can no longer suppress like the urge to breed or whatever, and so that's what's going on in it. And he has to go back to Vulcan and find his wife, and they gotta have some sex. But when they go back there, and they're about to get married, his wife instead chooses another man, and
Ooh.
yeah, and so Spock has to fight to the death for that, but she chooses to have Kirk fight in her new man's place. So Kirk and Spock have to fight each other to the death. It's a good episode. It's got
That, that,
T'Pau in it. T'Pau is
that,
pretty good looking.
that's some bullshit. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, why is it? Just what you said about his she has Kurt fight in place of her husband. No, heck no, no.
I can't remember
That's
all the details of it because it's a very, very, very long time since I've watched it, and
I would have looked at her like, yo, kiss my ass. No, I mean, you were supposed to be with Spock, and you went with this other dude. Now you want me to fight so your dude doesn't get killed? Kiss my ass. No, I hope Spock kills that dude. Kiss my ass. That's what I would have told her. But, I
no,
mean,
that's a mock
but
time, right?
oh, but
That's a mock time.
one thing I am looking, what I would like to see, I guess, is because they keep doing these remakes. I would like to see them do a remake with the Borg.
Yeah.
I think that would be interesting. Now, I don't know if that would happen with Captain Kirk or Captain Picard, though. I don't know if they would have to do one with Kirk and Picard, because Picard was the one I saw with the Borg, so I don't know.
Yeah, they didn't meet the Borg until season 2 of Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Hmm.
It would be neat if they do. With the new J.J. Abrams Star Trek movies, what they're doing is it's not necessarily a remake. To me, this is a reboot in its purest form. To me, a reboot isn't necessarily going back and changing everything. That's a remake. A reboot
Hmm.
is when you just give something new life, and that's what this is.
Yeah.
And what they did in Star Trek 2009 was because Nero went back and killed Kirk's dad, that created an alternate reality. They explained in one of the
Okay.
episodes of Next Generation that there are infinite realities based on whatever choice you make. Like, for instance, I could make another pot of tea, and if I don't make a pot of tea, it splinters into another universe where I do make a pot of tea. So
Oh.
this is taking place in an alternate. The J.J. Abrams movies are taking place in an alternate reality. So they're parallel to these movies that we're watching now. They're parallel to all of Star Trek, which is smart because if you just went back and said we're remaking Star Trek, then that's what 35, 40 years now, 50 almost of stories that are just null and void because they're remaking it. But now, because Leonard Nimoy showed up in Star Trek 2009 as Spock Prime, and he
Hmm.
exists in this alternate reality with Zachary Quinto's Spock, it makes it more of a sequel than it does a remake. So I think of it as a reboot. But because it takes place in a new reality, they absolutely could come up against the Borg. I would prefer, though, if they continue with the reboots and they do eventually get to the next generation, which I don't think they will, but if they ever do, it would be cool if they did the story "The Best of Both Worlds," which is which First Contact is kind of a sequel to "The Best of Both Worlds." In Star Trek: The Next Generation, there's a two-parter. It's the end of season 3 and the beginning of season 4, where Kirk is transformed into a Borg, and those
Yeah.
pretty rad episodes. And I think it'd be great if they did that as a movie. But um, hmm. To me, Wrath of Khan, as great as it is, and to me, it's sorry. I just want to sum up somehow. Wrath of Khan, as great as the movie is, and I'm not saying it's not great. It absolutely is. To me, it's just a great movie. It is a great Star Trek movie, but like I said, if you had never seen Star Trek before, and you didn't even know who Kirk and Spock were, which would be kind of impossible, um, and you just watched this movie, you'd be like, oh, that was a good movie. It's just a good movie. To me, it doesn't have a lot of the stuff that I'm starting to really enjoy in Star Trek, which is the exploring new worlds, understanding this new set of diplomacy and stuff like that. But that's what the show's there for. As far as movies go, it's a great movie. Now, before we go, just want to say real quick, the passing of Leonard Nimoy was very sad, and it made watching Wrath of Kahn kind of hard, just because he dies at the end of it, and he has a great death scene. But to me, you cannot understate how important Leonard Nimoy is to Star Trek. And I don't just mean he's iconic. Everybody remembers Spock. When you look at it in terms of storytelling, in the original series, he's the only alien on the ship, I believe, and he resembles a human, but he's got the pointy ears. He kind of looks like, originally he was supposed to look like the devil, with the pointy ears and the eyebrows that go like that, and so he was strange, but we could identify with him, so he was sort of our bridge into this weird world. So now we're ready for any weird thing we come up against because we've already met something sort of between us and the weird. But even deeper than that, his portrayal of Spock grounded the idea of this alien race. It gave them a gravitas. It made them feel real, very well realized, because he played it with such earnestness, and he played him with a lot of heart that would come through. And his portrayal of Spock is basically every actor's portrayal of any Vulcan ever. He laid the groundwork. As Kirk is important, and William Shatner is important because I think he represents the fun of Star Trek. He's the guy we want to be on the ship, telling people what to do, going up against aliens and whatnot. But Spock represents the soul of Star Trek, the wisdom of Star Trek, the philosophy of Star Trek. And without Leonard Nimoy playing that, I don't think we would necessarily have that. So it's very sad that he's gone, because we won't get to see him play Spock anymore. He was always very nice to fans. He was always a very sweet man, I guess. That's what I hear. I never met him, but I've heard from people who have that he's very sweet. And also, just 2 days ago, Harvey Bennett, the producer of Star Trek II, The Wrath of Kahn, and Star Trek 3, 4, and 5, passed away, who was also very important in Star Trek's history. To hear Nicholas Meyer, or Mayer, I'm not sure how you pronounce his name, Nicholas Meyer, who directed this movie, Harvey Bennett, Star Trek was in danger of going away forever. Star Trek the Motion Picture was a long time coming. It was originally supposed to be a TV series called Star Trek Phase 2, but they decided to do a movie anyway instead. It took a long time to get it made. It came out. It did not make a lot of money. People were not happy with it, and Star Trek was going to go away. Harvey Bennett came in, and he's like, look, I know how to make this work. He hired the right people. He oversaw everything, and if Wrath of Kahn wasn't the huge success that it was, Star Trek may be gone. So for both those guys, live long and prosper, I guess. It's corny to say, but they obviously can't live long and prosper because they're dead. But they did live long, and they did prosper. And there you go. They made they made several generations of people very happy. So whenever we do this again, we're gonna do the Crow films soon, and I'd like to do 2 Star Trek movies every time we do one of these. I'm not sure if we'll do them all in a row, but I'm just very interested to see the further we go in, to see if you get into it more and more. It'd be interesting. Until then, I am Non-Critic Dustin.
Non-Critic Will.
And...